Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Dialog BOX. My name is Laughingboy, and I am joined here today with the illustrious
Nintendo Capri Sun, who is not so illustrious, but thanks anyway.
No problem. So, tonight we will be talking about the Secret of Mana remake that has just been released within the last week or so. Probably within the last month or so by the time this episode goes out, but whatever. The recent Secret of Mana remake that came out on PlayStation 4, PlayStation Vita, and PC, from what I've been told.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yep, is a remake of the original game, which came out on the Super Nintendo back in 1993.
Yep.
And there are quite a few improvements, some of which some people like, some of which some people do not like. And I thought that you and I could go through this together because you and I, in particular, have very different experiences when it comes to this series. And I kind of wanted to talk about that first before we go into anything. So for you, if you could talk a little bit about your experience behind Secret of Mana. Like, did you beat it? When did you beat it? Like, kind of how did you beat it? That kind of thing.
Okay, and you're talking about the remake? Or the
I'm sorry, I'm talking about the original.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I got the original on my 18th birthday, kind of by surprise. I didn't even really want the game that bad, but my dad bought it for me, and I'm like, well, I'll give it a shot with it. Because I'd seen the pictures in Nintendo Power, and they looked all pastel, and it wasn't really my style. I wasn't sure, but once I started playing it, though, I couldn't stop. And I beat it within, like, 5 days, I believe it was.
That fast?
And it was just, yeah.
Dang.
I mean, it's not like I'm trying not to brag or something, but yeah. I was hooked on it. I was playing it for 8-9 hours a day, so.
No, that makes sense, then. So, I guess, I was gonna ask, how did you find out about Secret of Mana?
That was mostly Nintendo Power. That's the only way I knew.
Okay.
Nintendo Power was like my link to the outside world, pre-internet.
And when you played the game, did you... Your experiences with it, like, up till now, have you played only single player? Have you tried doing multiplayer?
I think I might have done it one time, one night, but that would have been a couple months after I got the game, but otherwise I didn't really have anybody to play it with, so nope.
Yeah, I mean, so for me, I only knew about Secret of Mana around, I would say, like, probably 1996, 1997, and I found out about it through Nintendo Power. Like, they listed it as one of their top 100 games in their 100th issue.
Wow.
So I knew about it from that, and I didn't really have the opportunity to play it until emulation, so it kind of got my feet wet, and then it came out eventually on, like, iOS. It wasn't until maybe a couple of years ago when I finally bought a physical copy of it.
Nice.
I don't know too many people in my circle of friends here that has really played it sort of when it was relevant, as you have. So it was sort of interesting to kind of see like this dichotomy of not only how did we find out about it, but sort of what our experiences will be as we continue the line of questioning. I did not beat the game literally until last night on the Super Nintendo. Yeah, we've been doing a Let's Play of it on my sister channel. I'll post the link in the description for the viewers out there, but we actually did not finish the game until just recently, and so we played the entire thing using a multi-tap, so we had all 3 people playing at once.
Wow.
And that's kind of like my major experience. I've played a little bit of it single player wise, but going through the entirety of the game, I've only done it in multiplayer, which comes with its fair share of bugs.
Oh, I believe it.
I think our game has crashed. Our game crashed like 5 times during a boss fight. Basically the boss would just disappear from the screen once it died, and you wouldn't get the victory animation. It would just, the game would stop.
Huh.
So we kind of, I guess you weren't technically terribly interested in it before you played it, but I think what stood out to you the most as you played it?
It was a lot of little weird things. I noticed that the character walked really fast compared to most games I played, like Link to the Past, for example. Link's pretty slow. At least by comparison to this game, he is.
Well, and he's got a strut to him, too.
Yeah, totally. Plus, you also, like, the camera doesn't move until you get really close to the edge of the screen, so that bothered me a little bit at first.
Right.
Because I wouldn't have time to react to monsters if I ran into them, like those flowers in the beginning. And just holy crap.
Yeah, no, and especially since they just look like every common flower.
Yeah, they do.
They
like blend in.
I think what really stood out for me was just the combat system was really awesome. Like, pretty easy to get into, and I liked how Square managed to fit in the active time battle system into a basically like a Zelda type game. So I thought that was particularly interesting about it, and I think being able to play it multiplayer wise was really like, it's a really nice way to play that game if you have the opportunity to do it.
Now that I think about it, I know you asked before if I'd ever played multiplayer with it, and I forgot that I actually did a multiplayer run with Inurian 59 a while back, a few years back.
Oh, that's right, you do have that.
And we never finished it, but...
Yeah. Do you think that this game, the Super NES version, holds up today?
Ooh. That's tough. Yeah, I'd say it does. Yeah, it does.
Do you have any, I guess... The best way to ask this question is, why?
Yeah, I feel like the music is especially... You're right on the level with most Final Fantasy games, and most of which still hold up today as well. But, aside from that... Ooh, well... It's just, I don't know, it's hard to describe. Like, the combat, like you were saying, is really good. Just the combination of Final Fantasy and Zelda being smooshed together into one. You don't really see that too often. Or at least you didn't back then. They started doing it with, like, the Castlevania series started doing it.
Right.
And then there was some other random one-off games like Illusion of Gaia did it, and then there's probably a lot more that I just don't really know about, but it's definitely more common these days.
Yeah, and I think the only other game that I can think of, especially before that, is, like, Crystallis.
Oh, yeah. I've never played that. I need to.
I think the only problem that I really have with the SNES version is just kind of the way that the story is told.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think one thing in particular is when you're talking to the king in Themaska, or Tasnica. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of another game. But the king in Tasnica, and then you talk to him, and then for some reason you just kind of find out that he's the spy everyone's looking for, and then he turns into a ninja, and then you kill him.
Yeah, that entire scene made no sense to me at all as a kid. I'm like, what is going on here? And he's like, they're probably at the entrance. I'm like, who?
Who? Yeah, what is happening? Yeah, no, I like, that drove me up a wall because I was like, nothing happened.
I know. Oh my god. Well, there was an entire chunk of the story that got cut out for the American version, like in the latter half of the game when you get those 3 seeds, bam, 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 5, 6, 7, just like that. But originally there was more story there, it just had to be cut out due to the limitations of the hardware. And I was hoping we would see that in the remake, but I don't know if I'm getting ahead of myself, but we didn't. So.
No, we'll talk more about that later.
Yeah.
Why do you believe people say that this game is a classic?
I think a lot of it has to do with the music, more than anything else. But maybe I'm just being biased, I don't know.
I mean, two other players that I played with during our run, I think the music was probably the best thing that they have, like, the best compliment that they've given the game. Mm-hmm. I do think that there's some maybe old RPG standards that didn't really work out too well. I don't know why they don't let you recover MP easily.
Oh yeah, they don't. Not for a very long time.
No, not for very... And then, even then, only one character can recover their own MP, and the other character still is kind of left in the lurch. There's some old, I guess, RPG tropes that... And I guess we'll get to this in a bit, but sort of, in my opinion, make the game a little tougher to play, especially for new RPG players.
Ah, yeah.
So I think I want to go into the remake right now. So we're going to ask a couple of questions, and we'll have our opinions about what we thought about the new, the PS4 remake of Secret of Mana. One thing that I kind of want to add before we get into it is, so back in 2016, Square Enix released Adventures of Mana, which a lot of people probably don't know even came out because it came out for the Vita. But it is a full-on remake of Final Fantasy Adventure, which is the first game in the Mana series. And I bring this up because the Secret of Mana remake is basically based off of the engine that they used to create this game.
Huh.
So I kind of want to preface that in the fact that I think a lot of people sort of give the game, the remake, some flack in terms of the graphics and the gameplay department, but when you think about, and again, the reason why maybe there was no Switch version at launch was probably due to this as well, because it was based off of an engine made for a Vita game, so there you go. So I just kind of wanted to preface that with a little bit of information on why the game sort of looks and feels the way that it does.
Yeah.
But, so you've actually beaten the remake, haven't you?
Yep.
And you actually did, I think that same night I was like, yeah, let's talk about this, let's do this.
Yep, I think so.
Yeah. So what stood out to you, I think, as far as improvements go? What stood out to you the most, I think?
I think, I'm like 60-40 here. I want to say like 60% the battle mechanics and 40 the graphics. So I feel like they did a lot of things to improve the battles, or just make them feel better. It just kind of feels better. I don't know, there's like so many like tiny things in my mind, like to swing the sword, you know, and you can like swing it in 360 directions, and then when you like get to the magic later in the game, you can set it to hotkeys and just shoot it out right away whenever you want. And I think a lot of it just feels a little smoother overall.
Yeah, I think the hotkeys make grinding magic levels a little easier.
A lot easier, yep.
I think being able to not only move in 360 degrees, but also be able to run in 360 degrees.
Yes, the running, absolutely, the running. Oh, it's so nice. And you can run away from your characters, you don't have to wait for them to catch up with you.
That's right. They can just, you know, be left behind and die.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is, almost every time I've ever run away from the characters and left them behind, they don't get hurt when I do that. So,
really?
At least in my experience, they almost never do.
I think I've had some characters die, like, when they were slightly off-screen. I think one of the things I've noticed the most is that certain enemies do not obey the, I guess, wait time system.
Yeah, no, that's true.
I've seen, especially like the Chobin characters, that will basically just fire arrow after arrow after arrow.
Oh, yeah.
And then like the Wizard Eye enemies that will cure about 5 times within 10 seconds. And the magic stacking glitch still works.
Well, I've seen a lot of times where, like, even something like a Rabite or a Silktail will run and charge at you and do that little spinny attack, and they'll just hit all 3 of you right away. And, like, what? Wait a minute. Did they do that in the original? Maybe they did, I don't know.
I don't think they did.
I feel like in the original they hit the first character, whoever was closest to them, and then they stopped. But
yeah.
I don't know. Because both times that I played, when I got to the upper land, that was when it spiked. The difficulty just... all of a sudden, I was getting my ass handed to me. Then it wasn't so bad after that, but just that one area.
Well, I think the spiky tiger fight for me was a little bit more difficult this time around because the partner AI is way different. So one of the things I noticed was that they no longer go by that grid-based system of the original. The AI now works based off of like almost like gambits in Final Fantasy XII.
Yeah, a little bit.
It's like either target who you're targeting, don't target who you're targeting, and then assist the other 2 characters, and that's about it.
Yeah.
Which can mean if your character's incapacitated, your other partner characters just stand there doing nothing.
Yeah, I haven't wanted to try that yet, the assist other characters, because it makes me think, well, what if they start casting Cure by themselves or something? I don't know, I wouldn't be used to that.
I honestly didn't notice anything. I don't notice my characters ever using magic until I tell them to.
Yeah, I wouldn't want them to.
I mean, that's true. MP is still a commodity.
So I don't really know what assisting another character would mean, or what's different about that. I haven't really looked at it.
I think the one biggest improvement of this remake is the storytelling.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think, like, despite what I guess people may or may not remember about the original game, is that things just are made clearer, not only by the way that people say things, but by the actions that people take as the game is progressing. And so you kind of see things more... You kind of see the story unfold more, I guess, professionally is the best way that I can say it. More like Square Enix would do it. But what do you think was made worse by the remake?
I hate to sound like I'm jumping on the bandwagon, but some of the music was maybe changed a little bit for the worse. Not all of it, but some of it is a little wonky.
So I noticed you're doing the Let's Play of the PlayStation 4 version, and I noticed that you are keeping the arranged music.
Yep.
For those out there, you can actually switch not only the voice acting from English to Japanese, but you can also switch the music from the arranged to the original. And I held out for about 20 minutes until I had to switch it to the original.
Oh. Yeah.
It was mostly the town theme. I heard the town theme for the first time in the arranged music, and I was like, what is this?
I know, that's actually another thing that really jumped out at me about Secret of Mana, the original, the first time I played it, was the drums in the music were so loud.
A little bit, yeah.
Like, it's like, anyway, and in this version, the drums are definitely not as prominent. And maybe that's a good thing, maybe not, I don't know, but I noticed that with the Village theme, now it's more like it, ooga chugga, or something.
A little bit. I think the weird thing to me is that the music sounds a little bit more electronic.
Yeah, that's true. They definitely modernized a lot of it.
Mm-hmm. And not in like a meaty sort of way, just kind of like just electronica type version of the original music. I think the other thing that bothers me is not the voice acting. I think the voice acting of the main characters is fine, honestly.
Yeah.
I know that's a common complaint with people that are reviewing the game and talking about it. The problem that I have with it is that the characters' mouths don't move.
Oh, yeah.
Like, after the very first cutscene, and I think, like, either Elliot or Timothy are talking, it's just like, what's wrong? Why are you doing that? Why?
Yeah, I know, and with Elliot's gigantic mouth, he's so angry, and it's just not a pleasant thing to look at the beginning of the game.
It really isn't.
It looks like the original, but it doesn't mean we want to see his ass up close. Anyway, never mind.
Yeah, that's true too. But no, it's just like the fact that they both have that like stupid, like toothy grin, and then they just don't talk. But I also noticed that Square Enix kind of fixed, I guess, a common localization problem, that characters that don't have specified genders, how do you like use pronouns with them?
Yeah, really.
The sprite I don't think was ever referred to with a pronoun in the original version, but in this one they just go by they or them.
Yeah. Well, I always call them it, so I don't know.
Yeah, I think it might have been used in like the manual or something like that, but they rarely ever, like, I guess they just decided not to use pronouns for the sprite for Popoi, and then they just, in this version, they kind of were just like they or their. And it caught me off guard for a second, but then I kind of realized, oh.
Me too.
Oh, good job. I like how we went from things that we thought were supposed to be bad about it, but we just kind of go to more positives. But yeah, I think personally the music's probably the weakest element of the remake, and probably just the mouth movie part. So I guess the tough question here is, do you think that this remake does the original version justice?
I believe that it does, yeah.
And I guess, is there any reason why you would sort of believe that to be the case?
Yeah, I think it does just enough. I feel like, this is what I think. I think if someone who had never played either game played the remake first, and then went back and played the original, they would probably think the remake was better. But I don't know. Like I feel like a lot of the love for the original is rooted in nostalgia a little bit.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Well, I think a lot of the improvements that they make, and I believe you're right about this. If with all the little minor improvements, they're just enough where if you were to play this first and then go back, you'd be like, wait, why can't I do that?
Why can't I see my MP?
Yeah, why can't
go in the ring and look for it?
You only know that you're out of MP when you're trying to cast something. And just having that visualization, and then I think like even some dumb improvements like being able to use despite the fact that you couldn't do this on an SNES anyway, but being able to use like the directional pad on the PS4 to switch characters.
Yeah, that is nice.
Instead of using start and select. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I didn't even think you could use you can rarely use the L and R buttons in the SNES version anyway. It was just to change menus if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I think so.
I don't really think that the ring system is that much different between the two, but
yeah.
But yeah,
well, for me the biggest problem was that it turns the opposite way the way it used to.
Oh, does it? I didn't realize.
It does. But I don't know. I think it turns the opposite way in Second Densetsu 3 too, which kind of makes me hope maybe they're gonna make a Second Densetsu 3. They're not going to, but man, I wish they would.
I mean, so they remade Adventures of Mana about 2 years ago.
That's true.
They remade Secret of Mana this year. If Square loves anything more than a Final Fantasy game, it is to remake a game. So
That's true.
I would not be surprised. One of two things I believe will happen. We'll either get the Secret of Mana collection. I don't know what we would call it.
The trilogy.
But the trilogy collection for Switch. I have a feeling that might happen. In which case they would all three just be the original versions. But I also believe that we could see a Secret of Mana 2. Or I'm sure they'll call it something of Mana.
Yeah.
I definitely see that remake coming out. It'll, like I said, be probably the same engine as the Secret and Adventures remakes will be, but
yeah.
I definitely see that happening. For a first-time player, do you recommend the original, or do you recommend the remake?
I would say the remake. I think part of it is loving the original can mess up your perception of the remake a little bit. I don't know.
I think so. There's a part of me that wants to say to play the original first and then the remake, because like you said, just in case someone wants to do both.
That is true. Yeah, you make a good point there, though.
Yeah.
Plus, I would hate for someone to never get a chance to hear the music of the original, too.
Yeah. I mean, they can, like I said, they can always switch it in the menus, but...
That's true, they could, yeah.
So that's there. But I think in order to understand the story, I would recommend probably the remake at that point.
Yeah.
So I do have a couple of stray observations, and if there's anything that you want to add to this, definitely feel free. Were there any other... in fact, I'll ask, were there any kind of modern-day improvements in this game that you thought were kind of interesting to talk about, or...
Oh, there's just so much. I guess, I don't know if I would call it an improvement, but I did notice that, like, when you hit an enemy and you miss, it actually says miss instead of just nothing happening like before. So you kind of wonder, like, why can't I hit this guy? But I also noticed that if you ever hit an enemy and their defense is so high that you do 0 damage, in the original it would actually say 0. But in the remake, I believe, I'm not 100% sure about this, but I believe in the remake it also says miss if you don't penetrate their defense. So that's why it seems like you miss a lot later in the game.
Okay.
But that's just a thing. But I don't know if I call that, like, a huge improvement. It's just a little different is all.
Well, I do like the miss factor being shown because, like I said, especially when you're playing multiplayer, you have no idea who's doing any damage.
Oh, yeah.
And another thing that I noticed about the remake is that hits stack a lot better.
Yeah, they do.
You don't have to wait for a golden opportunity to attack, unless you're... So basically in the SNES version, if you try to spam attacks, your first one will hit, but your future ones may not, because the enemy is in some kind of recovery phase. One thing I've noticed in the PS4 version is that if I attack someone and then somebody immediately attacks them after it, like a partner character, it may not show the attack damage right off the bat, but it will eventually show up.
Yeah, that's the same. It depends on the enemy, I think, too. Some enemies it works, some it doesn't.
Well, there were others where an enemy just wouldn't be hittable for like large, maybe just a couple of minutes. And I don't know if that was a problem with the game, but my partner characters would keep attacking something that couldn't be hit, and then maybe a couple seconds later, it would finally become hittable again.
Yeah, there is a spell that actually called Lucid Barrier that can cause an enemy to just be not hittable for a while.
Okay.
So it might be that.
I also noticed that sometimes an enemy would disappear, but my characters would still attack the air where the enemy used to be.
Oh, yeah.
So I noticed that. One thing that I thought was really cool, and something that was never in the original, was the skits that show up at inns.
I was just about to bring that up. Perfect.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting to kind of add more character.
Yeah, kind of flesh them out a little bit.
A little bit, especially since, like, in the original, they kind of just didn't really have much of a personality to begin with.
Not really.
Yeah, it's just your character was the hero because he was.
Yep.
And then in the remake, they kind of are just like, you kind of were a baby when I first met you, but...
Yeah. There is kind of one issue with it, though, is when you get past... Like, when you get to the upper land, there really is not an inn that you can see a cutscene at after that until the desert. Because the inn in Matango doesn't have space for a cutscene to occur. So you'll go through a whole lot of stuff before your next inn, and then you'll have like 5 or 6 cutscenes backed up in the queue.
That's true.
So, I don't know. It's just a little thing I noticed. It's not a big deal. Because you can always go back to Pandora to get them or whatever, but it's just kind of a hassle.
Well, I think there's even one skit that happens where they're talking about, I hope everyone in the Sprite's village is okay, but for me, that happened after the entirety of the Sprite village, scenario.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm.
It's like, I got news for you, buddy.
We've been there, done that.
I thought the UI was improved in that...
Oh, yeah.
I can both understand my weapon levels and select the weapons in that menu. I just thought, so in the original, you kind of had like a number-based system where you just see like the number of orbs that your weapon has, and then the number, I guess it's supposed to be a percentage before your next level up. The new UI kind of gives you a better visualization. It gives you that bar that you can look at. And it's easier to kind of see, well, my knuckles are at level 4, and I have 4 orbs, so I must be done. I'll move on to another weapon. And then you can select those in that weapon menu, which you couldn't do before.
I will say I didn't particularly care for them taking out the canon travel cutscenes, where you could see the overworld, see yourself flying over it, and just kind of imagine how big the world is, but now it just cuts to the next area and drops you in. So that kind of...
Yeah, I mean, the PlayStation 4 can't do Mode 7. That's all I know.
That's true.
Does Flammy control better? That's my big question.
It's different, but it's not too bad. You basically, like... I'm trying to figure out how to describe it. He kind of moves more... Well, I guess... mostly the same. He controls good, I'll say that.
Okay.
He's not, like, too awkward or anything.
Because it was a very awkward learning curve when we first were able to do it.
I generally think the overworld feels smaller than it did before. Like, continents aren't spread out as much.
Does that make it a little easier?
It does, but at the same time, the world feels kind of claustrophobic. I don't know if that's the right word. Like, you'll be floating over Southtown and you can see the desert from there. And it's like, you're not supposed to be able to see the desert from here. That's halfway across the world.
Yeah, right?
But otherwise, though, the overworld is intact and it's still the same as it was.
Yeah. But I feel like, on the other hand, like, there was just these vast amounts of ocean. And for me...
That's true, though. Yeah.
It just made it harder to figure out where I was going.
That does make sense. Yeah, I guess to someone who really knows their way around it obsessively would.
And then having the world map in the main menu is also pretty nice.
That is nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
I totally agree.
It works way better because you can just see everything. Well, if there's nothing else, I think we can cut this episode off here. Secret of Mana Remake is out now for PlayStation 4, Vita, and PC. You are most likely going to be able to find it on the PlayStation Store on both the Vita and the PS4, as well as, I believe, Steam. I think physical copies exist at GameStop if you want to go and look for that.
Yep, that they do.
But hey, thanks for joining me on this call. Like I said, I think it is really important to kind of talk about it from the perspective of someone who has played the original like you have, and the way that you did it, like way back when. So I thought that was important to kind of get you on the call for that.
Yeah, thanks. That was pretty awesome. It's kind of an honor sometimes to be one of the few people left, maybe, who has. I don't know. I guess a lot of people my age kind of abandoned the whole scene.
That's and like I know there are probably some like game journalists out there that have played it when it originally came out, but I just, from what I can remember, especially like in my group of people that I know, it's mostly they've played it through emulation. Didn't even know about it when it came out. So, I mean, for reference, I was 4 when it came out. So. Oh wow. So that's probably why I wasn't able to play it when it originally.
Not recommended for 4-year-olds.
No, I wouldn't. So, but yeah, thank you for joining me, and we'll definitely talk again.
You bet your booties.